Alright.
Alright, we're back here at Western Iowa Tech in our Power Sports Division with our air-cooled engine assembly. We're getting ready here. We've, so far in the previous videos here, we've done all of our gear case assembly and components, and we're good. We're going to use lots of assembly lube. Lionel's going to go ahead and start lubing that up. While he's doing that, I want to focus on some things on the cam cover here that we talked about in class. And one of the things Harley Davidson has is a specification for what they call pinion shaft runout, and that's an up and down movement here. You guys in the program here notice we all took a dial indicator on here and measured that movement. We turn this over, and that'll tell us if our crankshaft is out of true or if our bearings are bad in the case itself. If we do have a lot of runout, that's going to allow this to move closer and further away to the cam gear. So you can imagine we'd have distance going up and down like that. Well, that pressure is going to be transferred into these bushings. And so a lot of times this cover comes off the bench, it ends up being underneath and out of sight and out of mind, and we miss an opportunity to go ahead and check these out. Now as we look at this cam one here, it's just as perfect as can be. This thing's got 30-some thousand miles on it. It looks beautiful. We don't know if it's been replaced before. We have no idea. As we look at the crankshaft one though, if you could see in here, we can actually see there's a little bit of wear. I'm not scared. It's not something where it's a big problem. Our crankshaft turned out perfectly fine, but you could see if that got real excessive, what you would end up having is this wouldn't be a circle anymore. It'd end up being oblong, and that's what we'd be worried about. Does that make sense, guys? Yeah. So why don't you pass this around real quick. I want you guys to be able to look at that wear down on the pinion one or the smaller shaft one. We're going to go ahead and torque our fasteners to length. One of the other things I want you guys to notice is how we lay these parts out. I've done this numerous times. Give me that cover one more time. When you install bolts in a cover, one thing that you'll be able to do is you'll always be able to have the bolts in the cover. Like I should be able to put any of these in. Okay, and all of these bolts should hang out the same distance, which is about a ½ inch. I should have asked you guys, shouldn't have I? I'm going to go ahead and take this long one and put in the wrong one, and we can see how far it hangs down. So that's a way to cheat. If somebody brings you a basket case and you're unsure which bolts go where, put them all in the cover and they should hang down about the similar amount. The other thing you guys have seen that we've done in class is we went ahead and put a cover on, and it's the opposite side of it where they should all sit up about a ½ inch before we try and apply any kind of clamping torque. Pretty cool little trick there. So I've got these laid out. We're going to go ahead and pause the video now while we finish this up a little bit further, and then we'll come back to actually installing our push rods. Okay guys, we kind of fast forward this to make you not watch some of the boring stuff. Our cover's on, it's torqued, what was it, 90 to what?
120 inch
90
pounds.
to 120 inch pounds, so we're good to go here. New gasket. Well, one of the things I want to show you here is we've taken a rubber band and just a everyday paper clip, and we've assembled it in these push rod tubes, and that's going to kind of hold us in place. We're going to get our push rods in here in a second, but I want you guys to see, take the camera here. Here's an assembly of a push rod and everything that's required of this. O-ring, the inner tube, the cup, the spring, a metal washer, and O-ring. If you forget this metal washer, this steel spring here will dig into this O-ring, tearing it, and you're going to end up with a leak. And to fix this requires complete disassembly there. So this is not something you want to do. Otherwise, if you have adjustable push rods, you can make them short enough and you could sneak them out and you could change an O-ring. But if they're stock push rods, you'd have to take bolt cutters, or you'd have to completely disassemble all this, whichever is going to be lesser of the two evils. But regardless, if we do it right the first time, we're not going to have any problems. Then we have our outer tube. We have another O-ring, and then we would have a steel washer that goes under this one to push against the seat. So that's the components of the push rod tube. We've went ahead and shortened our push rods here. So now we could take and drop these down in place here. Just get them rough here. Grab another push rod. Okay, we've made these really super short here. Now what I'm attempting to do, and this rubber band's just really too small, and it's really going to want to spring up on me, and that's what's happening here. See if we can do this without it slamming out into our face. The nice thing about this is we should be able to adjust our push rods once we're in place without having it keep falling down on us. That's what we're attempting to do. So now that we're at this point, we're going to take a look at what we need to do to assemble this. So we'll just get a little bit closer here. What he's going to do next is I have to get this out of our way for right now. We'll come back to this. We're going to rough assemble this. This was just up here for demonstration purposes. You can see here how we have our bolts laid out. I want to get a picture of that. And this is simulating how they're going to need to go back in our rocker assembly here. So we can get rid of some of these other gaskets for right now. We're not ready for those. And we have our first gaskets going to go on. Harley Davidson, the aftermarket world, I think, made these first, but I'm not 100% sure. This used to be two pieces and they were a paper gasket. So if anybody out there has an old EVO with the paper ones, you could go these metal and rubber impregnated ones, and it really has eliminated, or I shouldn't say has eliminated, it's really reduced the rocker box leaks, especially for a customer who really doesn't let their bike warm up properly. A guy that goes out there, hammers on it right away, is going to end up causing such a change in temperature that the pieces are going to want to flex, and then we're going to have a leak. So this has really helped. One note we want to make about this, guys, is we noticed here that it says front. These guys noticed that when they disassembled it, and then we have rear. So it's directional how it's installed on this. One thing you're going to notice as well is the service manual didn't tell us to apply any Loctites. All the service manual wants us to do is assembly lube, obviously, on our tips of our push rods here. We're going to tip our valve springs here, and then Lionel, I'll let you start to put that on there. All our gasket material's been removed. I'm taking a look at this. One of the things that we also know is that oil is going to collect back here towards this exhaust side. It's going to run down a hole and then run down the cylinders we've talked about before. We did some stuff with base gaskets last week, so we're just being conscious of what we got going on here. As we just set this up here, one of the things we're going to do, like I said, is just get it loose. Go ahead and start grabbing your bolts. Your longer ones go in the rear. And I want to show something else that we can do in the video here. Here's a rocker that's disassembled. And what you guys see is this shaft has a slot for this bolt. And I'll put this back in. When this is in place, the orientation of the shaft isn't so important right now. When we are in the rocker, we're going to go through this, and that's what stops this from being able to come out of there. Pretty cool? Real simple design. Here's your longer one. I have it. Nope, right here in the front. Okay, now what I want you to do is you're going to kind of wiggle this, and you're going to make sure that you're through the gasket. Make sense? Okay, we're through the gasket. That's fine. Don't go too tight. Now go ahead. Nope. Outsides. Outside. Just get those loose. Okay. You got your three. These are all 1/4-20s, and these are 5/16. Yep, right down the middle. Awesome.
5/16, you said?
Yep.
That's 7/16.
Now we've got our push rods where they're shrunk, so we don't have any issues on this motor to bleed the lifter down. If it was a stock motor, and he's got his clutch set, I don't know if you guys could hear that in the video, he's got his clutch set on the least setting, so all he's doing is kissing that. There's no real torque that's being applied, so it's not going to be over-torqued. Now this one here didn't go down all the way. You can see how it's kind of a quote-unquote false torque. So let's go ahead and get our three smaller ones done here. This is your smaller socket for this one. Okay. Now, as you're getting close there, watch, slow down. What I want you guys to be able to do, let me in here, is if you needed to, you could move this around and get this in the best position right now. Does that make sense? You have a little bit of wiggle room right here. So now's your only chance. Once we start applying any kind of torque to this, we lose any availability to move around. So if you look here, I'm looking at the edge of where this gasket sits, and I'm making sure, I'm going to get in here with the flashlight, that we're nice and along the edge there. Okay? Everything's looking good. It's looking good here. So we can see how I can pull that over a little bit. You see that? Another thing I can do is see where the push rod actually sets on the valve. If I move it here, I'm actually kicking off at an angle. Would it run? Sure, it'll run, but it doesn't make it the best. So what we're doing is we're making this as perfect as we can. We're nice and straight on the valve on both of these. Now go ahead and snug those down, then it won't move on you. Okay, that thing shouldn't go anywhere now. Okay, we'll go ahead and pause the video for right now. We'll go ahead and get this torqued up. Alright, we're going to continue on here. Here's that paper clip trick, and just wrapped up around here again so that we can actually work. Our push rods were just slipped through before we torqued all of this down. We had, 4, 6, 7, 9 different fasteners here. One of the things I've done is I've got these fairly just set in here super loose. I have them shrunk to their smallest point, and it's kind of a pain in here with this accessory cover because I can't grab on this very good. But if I just put a little tension on the bottom here and rotate this, it's going to hold enough, there's going to be enough drag on here so that I can go ahead and make this long or get this in place. Before we can adjust these, we have to, per everybody's recommendations through their installation instructions, it says that we want to be on the base circle of the camshaft. For that to happen, what we're going to do is we're going to use basic four-stroke theory here to find that base circle of that camshaft. Now what I'm going to do is have Cyrus here turn the motor over. He's going to go through the cycles, and what we know is we have intake, compression, power, exhaust. So what we're going to look for is the intake valve to actually start to open. So we can see here it opened up, and now the intake valve is going to close. And what we know about four-stroke theory is once that intake valve closed, the piston is going to come back up, and that's the compression cycle. And you're on it right now. So we are on the base circle of both of these valves, so now we can go ahead and adjust them appropriately. We're going to go ahead and we're going to adjust these to what they call a zero lash, meaning that they just have the slightest amount of rotation. So I'm going to go ahead and do one here. Do you see how that's starting to get tighter, guys? Yep. It's starting to take up that free play. So you guys know, as you've had these apart, that we have a round tip that's well lubricated, that's up into the rocker shaft, and the other one is going down into the tappet. So we want to get these round surfaces set in place in those two areas. And what you'll notice is if you have it wrong, you're going to notice it right away because it wants to snap out of there. Now the other thing I want you guys to be careful there doing this motor, this chrome cover that I told you I hate so much, it is really sharp. Okay. Smaller fingers, you get in there. Yeah, I got her. Okay. Now I'm going to double check myself to make sure I'm engaged in the rocker. I should have a little bit of free play here. I'm going to go ahead and I just got that to where this will just start to rotate. Does that make sense? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my one wrench and go on the flats, and I'm going to take my other wrench, and what I'm going to do too, the Revtech ones are really cool for the fact that they have these numbers on here. And we were kind of taking, listen, I can't stress this enough for you guys in YouTube. This depends on the manufacturer of this push rod on how many flats you're going to preload that. That document that we came up with in class today showed all the different thread pitches. There was a great website out there that showed all the different brands. Some of them are fine thread, some of them are coarse thread, and that's going to determine the number of flats that you use. So we have to use some caution. To keep myself out of trouble, I'm not going to tell you what every single brand does. My recommendation is go to the manufacturer's website. Like in this case, we could go to Revtech. Here's the CC, the custom chrome part number. Look it up, get the instructions, and go from there. We are roughly, we're setting these at 3.5 turns due to the fine thread of this one. Screaming Eagles that we looked up today, remember what those were, guys?
3.2.
The Screaming Eagle ones that I showed you that document on? 2.5. I know this is, you guys are really new to this, that's fine, but you would definitely want to use those instructions or we're going to end up in a problem here. Alright, so I'm going to grab a hold of this. I'm going to hold this. What I'm going to do is this 5 happens to be facing me pretty good right now. I'm going to see I got the least amount of free play. So just to help myself out, I'm going to use this 5 here. Now what I want to do is I want to take and start to, now I'm going to make sure I need to go counterclockwise here. Now I don't have to pay so much attention to it. And I'm going to go until I set that at 3.5 turns. I'm left-handed here, so this is being a little bit awkward for me. Okay, the 5 has just come around, so that's 1. 2, 3, and now I just make that line go 180 degrees to the back side. I'll be at 3.5. You'll notice here it's not like super precision. Do the best I can. Now that I'm in place there, I can take my lock nut. Don't forget this part so it doesn't come down on you. Now this is the part where it's really, now see how I can't move that right now? What's happened? How would you describe that lifter? The lifter needs to bleed down. So per most manufacturers' instructions, we're saying anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. I've seen lifters take a half hour to bleed down. They're pretty tight. So I'm going to jam these two together here. Now since I have so many hands here, I'm going to ask for another hand to hold the tip. Get these good and tight. There was not a torque spec for this, so tight's tight there, okay? This is done. Now since I'm doing the one cylinder at a time, I can go ahead and start to work on my exhaust one. This is going to bleed down. Once I get both of these done, what I want to be able to do is rotate these before I turn the motor off. So we're going to pause right now. We're going to go ahead and adjust this other one. Okay, let's set this cam. All right guys, we're going to get going here.
Go.
We're continuing on with this demonstration we've been doing of the Speed 20 engine. What we stopped and took a break for was to go ahead and let the lifters bleed down. You guys actually saw where this one I was unable to rotate it because it was the lifters bled up. So we can rotate this one and we can just start to rotate this one, which means we have some free play. So anytime before we close this up, what we want to do is go ahead and rotate the engine. Go ahead and do that in normal direction of travel. We got spark plugs out. What's cool is we can actually watch this operate now. Now what he's doing is he's going to go slow. You aren't going to go in there, and if this were in the motorcycle, you wouldn't go in there and actually just hit the starter button or something. There's a chance you could bounce the valves off the pistons. So go ahead and just keep rotating the normal direction of travel. A couple things that we're doing is we're making sure spark plug's out, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Longer stroke.
Yeah, go longer stroke all the way over here. All the way across. Okay? And we're going nice and slow there, and what we're doing is making sure that we don't have any contact with the piston. This is your last chance. When you start to do this, you're going to end up having a problem if you don't do this. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the base circle again. The intake just moved. Just stop right there. And I know that we're real close right here just watching how much this bounced, and see how I can rotate that perfectly fine. I can rotate this one perfectly fine. So now we're going to be able to move forward and actually close up this side. These guys would go ahead and most people would go ahead and do all of it. Then you'd have the opportunity to turn the engine over, being able to watch all four of them open and close multiple times, checking that you don't have any issues, and you're going to be good to go. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to make sure, and I want you guys to see how to properly install this pushrod tube into a Harley Davidson motor here. We know we have a metal shim that's down here that you guys saw we had a part before, okay? So what I want to do is get my O-ring up here. I've got lots of lube on here, especially with this accessory cover here. Did you guys notice how I kind of rocked that in place? Now every time you have an O-ring, you should be able to spin this and it should be perfectly fine and free. Does that make sense? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my cup and I'm going to work this up, and I'm going to get up inside here, hold the flashlight here, get the video in here, and we'll see if you can see this. And I'm going to pop it. I'm going to make sure this goes, and I'm going to pop it into place up in the cylinder head. The other thing you notice, see how there's a little bit of wiggle room here? That's normal. If you don't seat that O-ring, it's going to be a problem. It's going to leak, and it's a pain in the butt to try and fix this once I'm in place. Now, a lot of times with new O-rings, it'll kind of stick itself and seat in place. Can I have the tool? This is a neat tool by Motion Pro. There's multiple companies out here that have the same tool. And what this allows me to do is spread the cup, slip this in place with no effort whatsoever, and I'm able to do this. Some of you guys have seen the trick where you take and use a screwdriver on a fin here, and then a pair of needle nose pliers and pop it in and out, and that works fine too. The other thing I want you guys to think about is look at the cosmetic value of this. Make sure and put your clips right in the middle here so that it looks good. A customer doesn't want to come out and see half their push rod exposed like that. Does that make sense? So we're going to have this nice and in place. We would go ahead and do the other side here. Like I said, this chrome cover here is being a pain here. We might have to pry on that a little bit to get that up in place. We'll set this